I have the incredible Raja Dhir. He is the CEO and co-founder of Seed Health. And I think there's nobody more relevant to today than Raja because he and his expertise in the entrepreneurial space is that in the microbiome space. He understands not only at a personal level, but at a planetary level, how bacteria forms, disseminates, spreads, all the things that we are so curious about. But I think what I want to start with, Raja, is what are the similarities and parallels between bacteria and entrepreneurship? Because I see, exponential growth, compound interest, all these different things that are completely relevant to how you see things dissipate, spread, grow, accelerate. And where are those similarities for someone with your background?
Yeah, I love the question. I look to nature and biomimicry in many ways for inspiration, both in business but also in personal development. And the microbiome and bacteria do not disappoint in that respect. You find all kinds of parallels from, most people don't realize that bacteria form very interconnected and closely related ecosystems and communities. They very much work together. Very rarely will you find even in extreme environments like hydrothermal vents and deep under the ocean, in blocks of ice, you rarely find just one organism on its own. It's usually part of a co-evolutionary process. And so I think that this idea of thinking about ecosystem design, everything from how you build team culture to how you consistently grow and maintain a customer base, to how you can sustainably grow without exhausting the system or without endangering the stability of the system, and the communication and efficient use of resources are all things that bacteria do, which would be very relevant for an entrepreneur.
And I see also, when you are in the health space, I always tell people later on in my career and my life, I realized how important my health was. I used to put my family first and the activity I get paid for second, and then my health third. And what I started realizing was I really never could get to my health because I always wanted either to spend time with my family or my time in activity making money. And so as that shifted later on, understanding how if I built my strength and my health and my happiness, that those things in symbiosis also work together in order to create a very positive evolutionary environment for success. A lot of that stems from understanding biology, biochemistry, metaphysics, physics, etc. And it took a lot of years and mentorship to at least get a high level understanding of that. Because you have a much deeper understanding, how do you equate health, strength, and happiness uh, that we have today into what you're doing and building your business?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. It's actually a good thing that I think at our core, good humans are charitable and do consider and think of others. And so our own health oftentimes goes to the sideline before some of those other areas that you described, which is a good thing. We're community and I think philanthropic and charitable at our core. Um, there's a selfish argument that can be made for taking care of your own health, which is that if you're in better shape, and you're performing well, then you're able to do those other things better and for longer. And so, the microbiome is a very interesting phenomenon for people listening that aren't familiar with the term. It's this collection of bacteria and microorganisms that live in and on the human body. And it wasn't really until, only in the last 10 or 15 years has this field really exploded and we start to understand what this community is. But one thing that works really well for humans to stay motivated is to externalize something. And by that, I mean, if you really do let yourself have these self-sacrificial tendencies and you think about this other community or network of organisms living and thriving in and on you that depend on your dietary, nutritional, and health choices to flourish and thrive. It's a bit of a simplification, but it's a very nice way to externalize that responsibility and stay motivated. And when you when you think about what you should pick to eat, there's about 38 trillion other organisms that depend on that same decision making.
You know, it's interesting. My wife always told me, right, if you take care of yourself, then you'll be able to take care of others. And that's truly the business you're in, is taking care of people. One of the things that I find about scientists, and as a venture capitalist, as an angel investor, as a consultant, executive coach, I'm constantly looking at the blend between great ideas, faith, and monetization. And one of the more difficult things with engineers and scientists is to create a crossover of, hey, this is an incredible innovation. This is an incredible creation. But, you know, getting an entrepreneur like yourself to understand the business behind it, and that unless we can create revenue and create a business, that there isn't going to be enough monetary support in which to accelerate the discoveries that are necessary and important. How have you gained those skills and that knowledge in which to effectuate the monetary business side? Because you are, you know, a scientist at heart, and you understand the technology and the biochemistry of it. You know, where did you find that resource to give you the scaling and the money side of what you're doing?
Yeah, I have a couple really relevant points there. So the first is, you've heard it a lot before, but now coming on, trying to crack and scratch and analyze markets and everything, but from a science perspective, or biotechnology or life sciences. You know, let the idea, the quality of the innovation will always come before the size of the market. And so always look for industries that are, well, you know, it goes without saying that you should start by just become the best in your field. Or if you can't be yourself, then find and work with the best in the field. And not only does that help to give your company more credibility, which is something that we did very early on, but it also is an amazing way to pressure test your ideas. You know, I'm always skeptical or critical of people that hold ideas because they're scared of replication, because the risk of replication is so much smaller than the reward that you get by bouncing ideas off the smartest people in their respective fields. So that's always how I challenge or vet something before entering into a new industry, on both the entrepreneur and founder side, but also when advising or when doing diligence for funds on investments that they may want to make in the field or space. So that's the first part of it. And the second is really, really make sure that, you know, we've heard this before in tech in particular. People said, well, the internet, we've already exhausted all the ideas on the internet. And then social media came about, and it's like, well, Facebook has already done everything, you know, and then now people are turning to augmented reality and different forms of like digital learning or visualizations, and say, well, that's already, you know, in science in particular, I can say that there is, for every one good discovery or breakthrough, it opens up 10 new businesses that can work alongside that technology. So maybe not everything's going to be, you know, 10x unicorn knockout success, but there's tons of opportunities to both innovate, create value, and be a first mover or just the best mover in all of these areas that come alongside other innovations. So, you know, it really is a dynamic field. Don't come from a scarcity mindset. And then when it comes down to execution, it's all the classic tips people have heard before, which is, you know, be the best, just be the domain expert in that one area. It doesn't matter if that one area is encryption, you know, whether it's a security for GDPR as a service for you know, when regulations change, or whether it's gene therapy for a life sciences company. When new inventions come on, be obsessive. And usually in about 6 good months of total immersive learning and surrounding yourself and vetting your ideas with the best in the field or partnering with them, you can build up the expertise to contribute meaningfully in a new field.
You know, and I'd be amiss to not talk about the big elephant in the corner, which is what critical business issues or effect is this virus going to have on our economy and on the business prospects for entrepreneurs. Since you understand these bacteria and these viruses better than anyone that I've talked to, what should we be preparing for, in your opinion? What are those critical business issues that are going to evolve from this virus?
Yeah, so I'll answer it in two ways. First is just to give a little background on what's going on with this virus, how it's going to affect society, the economy, technology, entrepreneurs, and then I'll end with some, um, you know, ways in which this could be entrepreneurs can help change or address this evolving landscape.
Thank you.
So uh, this virus is a lot of people are freaked out. They think this is some very new thing, but it's not. Viruses have jumped from animals due to our abuse of environment and other species for the last how many ever years and our history of doing so. Now we just travel more, we're connected more, and something in a bat in China can now spread to presidents of and heads of state in all the way across the world. So it's nothing very radical. It's something which was very closely related to the SARS virus that evolved in 2000 in the early 2000s. The main issue is that we contained that a lot better. SARS 1, as I'll call it, was restricted to just 5 countries and lockdown in Asia and 8,000 cases. Already, we're now seeing that these numbers are exhausting the healthcare systems. And as of the date of this recording, we have over 100,000 confirmed cases in the United States alone. So it's definitely spreading and changing everything as we know it. Hospital systems are overwhelmed. Medical students are being graduated early to go help and address the system. Tests are tests just in the last month have gone from requiring 5 to 7 day turnaround times. I mean, when I was traveling in very high risk places and did get a test early on, and it took me 7 days to wait for it. With that incubation period and what we know about this virus, you've already spread it to so many other people. I've heard stories from members of our scientific advisory board that are doing a lot of these sequencing tests at Baylor College of Medicine, at University of Maryland, at NYU Langone, that are telling me stories of people that are coming in completely asymptomatically. There's one story of someone that went out, got hit by a car after leaving the emergency room, came back in for her car illness, and they looked in her lung scan and found that she was completely asymptomatic but carrying and spreading coronavirus. We see surgeons that are asymptomatic that are going in and spreading it to other people in the hospital and patients. So containment and quarantining really today is the best solution that we have, and we know people are starting to do it, but it's not enough. New blood tests are starting to become developed. I think Abbott just made an announcement last week, and now there's even 2-minute turnaround time blood tests. And there's pros and cons of all of these things, but how is this affecting business? I mean, we're seeing the markets are completely crashing as a result of this uncertainty, which does have historic precedent. We're seeing that life as we know it has completely changed. Kids are out of school. Our reliance on technology has actually never been greater. And that's technology in all forms, whether it's healthcare technology or personal communication technology that keeps society and the economy functioning when we have to physically isolate. So right off the bat, I can think of so many different things that maybe will get resolved and go back to life as normal at some point with this virus. But opportunities that both technology entrepreneurs but healthcare entrepreneurs can really help us better prepare for these in the future. And the obvious ones are communications technology, healthcare technology. I think for a long time we've thought that virtual healthcare and a different way of thinking about doctor's office and how clinical trials are being run to validate new drugs, approval times for new tests. All of these create tremendous opportunities, both for viral immunology, but also for healthcare as a whole. So it really is a once every 100 or so years, you see these types of events that happen and ripple through society. And actually every indication is telling us that we're going to have more and more of them in the future instead of less. So I really think that this is an unprecedented time in terms of how we adapt and evolve to these types of pressures.
And understanding that last question, I think one of the biggest problems with this circumstance is the uncertainty, because I always say uncertainty causes anxiety. When we have such quick and dynamic change, that we compress uncertainty and it creates more anxiety, which slows things down. And slowing things down is not the greatest thing for the economic or entrepreneurial side of things. Knowing what you know, how do we end up containing this and getting past it? What is going to signify, okay, we've beat this thing, we at least can go ahead and open our doors?
So I think unfortunately it may be past the point of total containment. A lot of virologists are estimating that there will be some dormant and latency period where this maybe goes underground and starts to come back to more seasonally. Right now, it is very positive to know that while we're waiting for vaccines to be developed, that it looks like people are generating antibodies, which means that you can get immunity. If you get it once, you can at least get some persistent immunity. For we don't know for how long, but it looks like it's something that can be developed. Germany yesterday announced that they were going to just do 100,000 tests a day, and once someone's gotten it and developed immunity to it, they could slowly release them back into the workforce. So you can kind of have, for healthcare and our healthcare workers, that type of approach and idea is incredibly important, where you know who is good and can go back to work versus who's at high risk or versus who could be an asymptomatic carrier. And so, it's at this point, the key, when you keep hearing these things, these terms, flatten the curve, it's not that we think that we'll always be able to prevent this forever. At the stage that it's at right now, I would say it's 50-50 whether we ever will be able to knock this thing out, or whether it'll just be something, a new part of reality. But the most important part of that is, if you do it slowly, you give the scientific community time to develop, to understand it, to see who's at high risk, to see what containment and vaccine strategies work, and to see what types of people have more immunity against this, and who actually is at higher risk, while we buy ourselves time to develop treatments and approaches to prevent and address the disease. So that is the most, and now every month, every 6 months that we can buy our scientific community will really go a long way to address the total impact of this condition.
Yeah, it's amazing. I always say that, I support junior achievement because I always say the entrepreneurs are truly ones that save the world. We're the ones that can take and say, oh, wait a second, we need more respirators. How do we make one respirator accessible to 10 people? Because we're pivoters and solution people, and we need great minds that also understand great solutions, and everybody working together. Final quick question, because I know we're going a little bit long. Do you feel as if, though, this experience is unifying us in any way? And do you see the positive side, or what's the greatest attribute that you see coming out of this?
I do. I mean, I see actually many. I mean, once you can evaluate this objectively and get out of that initial fear phase of looking at it, there are some positives. The first is, China looks like it's going to finally enforce and take severe action on wildlife and exotic animal trafficking and trading. Just from a environmental standpoint, I think more examples of this, where we show that, we have to live in harmony ecologically instead of exploit the natural world, I think are very, very positive outcomes. I think people are very unified and very connected. It's almost like we're all in this one together. I think science is getting a much needed opportunity in the spotlight to not just be something that kicks out random esoteric studies, but I've never seen the scientific community unified in the way that it is right now around one singular issue and problem. It's beautiful to watch. And I think the public is really engaged and watching and understanding the importance of, the stuff that's not typically sexy, like the sequencing of viral genomes, isn't something that is, given, I think, appropriate credit, but it is something that's very important and a huge driver to society. And I think that actually it's resetting some of the liberties that we take for granted, being able to just go over and spend time with a friend or family member or loved one, to be able to go out and just enjoy a nice walk on your local park or trail, and nature, and actually to show that there can be such a thing as too much Netflix. there's a lot of things. I think that it's a gentle reminder that you know, there are a lot of things we take for granted in day-to-day life that really are liberties that people work very hard for. And the last one, and just because, as you know, scientifically we get so bothered when you hear about anti-vaxxers or science, you know, skepticism coming from people that haven't done the work to understand the science, and they just perpetuate uncertainty as fact. And I guess my final comment on the question is, you know, there's people out here saying that that vaccines shouldn't exist, and this is just an example of what happens when one vaccine doesn't exist. So it really, really makes us look at some of the, you know, privileged positions that people have, or cherry-picked, I guess, opinions people have in the context of global public health. And so I hope that we all come out of this a lot more informed and educated. And you know, certainly we're doing, as a company, we're doing our part to participate to the extent that we can in information, in making this content and what's happening accessible, but also in a way that is purely additive and constructive and of service, instead of you know, the company running a company during a pandemic. You kind of just can't do it. It's just there's bigger things on everybody's mind. You have to be able to weather the storm, so to speak, and then get back to day-to-day operations when this thing blows over.
I certainly appreciate your time and perspective. We really needed to hear on the playbook, because every entrepreneur out there needs to be informed and get a great perspective on how to stabilize and how to take advantage of the opportunities to be of service, provide value, and create great innovation, creation, and change, which is our responsibility and accountability as entrepreneurs. And Raja, you're an amazing entrepreneur, CEO and co-founder of Seed Health. I appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your playbook.